like you are physically remodeling your cells whenever you learn. It takes weeks to finish. When you learn something new, your brain is not just storing information like a file, it is rebuilding the tiny structures inside each neuron. Those changes involve actin filaments and microtubules rearranging themselves at dendritic spines. This is not metaphor. The spine literally grows larger after certain kinds of learning, and shrinks when you do not use the connection. So the memory trace is written in physical structure. For the full research archive on structural memory, visit jmthomasofficial.com. The cell does not just change shape, it remembers the shape. When you stretch, compress, or move through space, your cells are reading physical signals from their environment and converting them into gene expression changes. The force on a cell's surface can reprogram its entire gene expression profile. That same mechanism governs whether your cells respond to stress, to sleep, to the food you eat, to the mechanical forces of movement. Every time you stretch, you compress, you move through space, you are sending signals that reconfigure your cells at the molecular level. This is why posture, why thermal regulation, why the rhythmic loading of exercise matters as much as any supplement. For the full research archive on structural memory, visit jmthomasofficial.com. When you stretch, the cell does not just feel the stretch, it translates it into a signal. This is called mechanotransduction. Physical forces on the cell surface are converted into biochemical signals that reprogram gene expression. The actin-binding protein talon acts as the primary mechanosensor here. This is why the same posture you hold during a high-stress conversation produces a different cellular signature than the same posture held during deep meditation. For the full research archive on structural memory, visit jmthomasofficial.com. But here is the part that flips the entire model. The cell is reading the rhythm of the force, not just the force itself. The frequency with which you load and unload your tissues may be encoding information just as specific as any gene sequence. The cytoskeleton is not merely structural scaffolding inside neurons, it functions as a computational substrate. When actin filaments polymerize and depolymerize in response to mechanical stimulation, they are processing information in the same way neurons transmit signals across synapses. This mechanism may explain how structural memory persists for weeks after a single intense learning event. The physical architecture of the cell encodes the history of every force it has experienced. The question is whether cytoskeletal signals can trigger epigenetic reprogramming. If they can, then every mechanical interaction a cell experiences becomes a candidate for rewriting its functional identity. The answer to that question is not abstract. Physical tension on the cell surface triggers a cascade that reaches the nucleus. Actin-binding proteins like talon do not just sense force, they recruit chromatin remodelers. Histone modifications, those same marks that regulate memory and stress response, can be set by force alone. This is why posture matters. It is not just a signal to the brain, it is a signal to the nucleus. Consider how a cellular antenna constantly tuned to the frequency of the forces around you. Every sustained pose, every held tension, every repetitive movement you make is literally writing epigenetic marks onto your genes. The implications for how we think about stress, sleep, and even consciousness are staggering. What if the cell is not just reading the force, it is calculating it? The frequency, the rhythm, the pattern of loading and release, these are not passive signals, they are queries. Your body is running a continuous computation, and the answer matters more than the question. Why would evolution pay that cost? Maintaining celestial sensors, recruiting chromatin remodelers, rewriting epigenetic marks in response to a stretch. That requires enormous metabolic investment. The machinery alone must be worth the energy. The answer to that question might be hiding in the oldest organisms on Earth. Before neurons, before DNA, before anything we would call a living thing in the modern sense, there were still cells, still membranes, still forces. Something had to have been processing information before biology could even define itself. The full research archive on structural memory is at jmthomasofficial.com. The reason evolution invested in this machinery is simple. The cell has to respond to the world. It cannot afford to ignore the forces shaping it, because ignoring them would mean losing the ability to adapt, to learn, to survive. Every organism that ever lived depended on this same conversation between structure and force, between what a cell feels and what it becomes. So the takeaway is this: every posture you hold, every stretch you do, every movement you make is a conversation between your body and the forces around it. The rhythm matters more than the force. A slow, deep stretch triggers a different cascade than a quick, sharp one. The frequency with which you load and release your tissues shapes the signal reaching the nucleus. Which means your daily habits, your sleep posture, your walking stride, your breathing pattern are not just habits, the instructions your cells read at the molecular level. For the full research archive on structural memory, visit jmthomasofficial.com. The cell remembers what you do to it. The question is, what will you do to it today? The cell does not just respond to force. It responds to the rhythm of force. A slow, deep stretch sends a completely different signal than a quick, sharp one. The frequency with which you load and release your tissues shapes the signal reaching the nucleus. So the next time you stretch, the next time you sit, the next time you walk, try to slow down. Not to be dramatic, To be precise, your cells are constantly reading the world, they are waiting for the right frequency. This is why posture matters. It is not just about the shape of your spine, it is about the rhythm of your movement. The same position held for 30 seconds versus 3 seconds produces entirely different cellular signatures. The full research archive and structural memory is at jmthomasofficial.com. The cell remembers what you do to it. The question is, what will you do to it today?